Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of day you're watching us, and whatever time of day you will be watching the replay. You're welcome to Between the Lines podcast, where we talk about adolescence, parenting, and everything in between. This is our 19th episode, and I want to say thank you for being loyal to us. All right, so today we're talking about a group of people who are often talked about but not always understood: teenagers. The teenage years are filled with growth, change, questions, emotions, and sometimes confusion. Yet, many teenagers find themselves being labeled as stubborn, rude, difficult, or disrespectful, when there may be so much more happening beneath the surface. As someone who loves working with teenagers and is passionate about the stage of adolescence, I believe that understanding young people is one of the most important things that we can do as parents, educators, counselors, or even adults generally. So today, we are having an honest conversation on the topic understanding teenagers. Joining me is a counseling psychologist who will help us unpack teenage behavior, emotions, pressures, relationships, and what adults need to know about this generation. So, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a counselor, or a teenager yourself, this conversation is for you. All right, so join me as I bring up on stage our guest for today, Dr. Israel Agbeja. Hello, Dr. Israel.
Hello, Ms. Falakami. Good evening. How are you?
Good
Thank you
evening.
for.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So today we're talking about understanding teenagers. Before we go into the nitty-gritty, let's talk about the stage of adolescence. What exactly is the stage of adolescence?
Okay, adolescence basically refers to that stage that a young person begins to experience several changes in their body, their mind, and in how they view themselves. While there are several definitions as to when it actually starts. Some will believe it's between 12 and 24, it's between, but then certain things particularly mark the stage of life. It is that a young person begins to see themselves as not young anymore, not a child anymore, and begins to, demand that the same respect, the same way adults are related to, are spoken to, is the way that they are spoken to also. And this is occasioned by a lot of changes in their body as a release of hormones. For men or for boys, a large quantity testosterone. For the girls, there's the estrogen and the progesterone. These hormones bring about development of what we call the secondary sexual characteristics or features. That the growth of breast, the enlargement of the penis, the deepening of the voice, the growing of facial hair on the chest for some guys, and so on. And then when they see that, what used to mark, I mean, what those things that marked the differences between them and adults are no longer there. Adults have breasts, they also have the breast, they also now have hairs in their pubic region, and because of the release of these hormones, some begin to experience, in fact, the average teenager or adolescent begins to experience more desire for intimacy, more desire for intimacy, which is sexual and may not be sexual. There is that sense of the feelings of being alone, the feeling of being alone, and then wanting, that can call their own, somebody they can really roll with and relate with at very close level. So these are basically those things that mark the stage of adolescence.
Well, thank you. So basically, the onset of puberty is the entrance into the stage of adolescence. Okay. Yeah, one thing that
Yes.
Thank you. One thing that I've come to know is that at the stage of adolescence, one thing that they strive to have is identity. So why is identity so important at the stage of adolescence?
Okay, yeah. Just adolescence, like I was trying to say, that stage is a stage in a person's life where when they want to, like you mentioned, identity, and that's because they be bombarded with a lot, before they go to that stage. If you happen to be a Christian, your parents are telling you a lot at home how you should behave. The church is telling you a lot about how you should behave. The school might be telling you something different from what you hear from home and at church. And sometimes too, you have friends who are also feeding you with uh, sometimes not the exact information you are getting from home and from church. And then you have some brothers, some big brothers. Back then we used to call them area brothers and area sisters.
What do
Then they are
you
influencing. And these days, there's so the social media, and a lot is going. And you at that stage, you come to a place. Young people come to that place of um, mental awareness. No longer do they want to be in the shadows of their parents, and no longer do they want to be uh, that kid that is, kicked around by the church, the school. They want to say, okay, this is who I am. And why they have, that comes a time in someone's life that one has to, define themselves by one thing or the other. And because many times than not, they've been defined as several things by different places that they belong to. So at that point, when they come to self awareness, they want to give a name to themselves, they want to give a brand, they want to brand themselves. And that then leads to what we call identity crisis. What we call it is identity becomes a preoccupation. Identity formation becomes a preoccupation for an adolescent, basically because they've come to a point of self awareness. And then question now that you have come to a sense of awareness, this is okay. I have become a person. I am a person. Okay, the question then is, who am I? I've come to know me. The next question is, who am I? That is when identity comes into the picture for adolescents.
Hmm. Thank you. That question, who am I? So for someone who is in the stage of adolescence living under their parents, how can parents be of support to a teenager who is trying to find themselves? What is the role of
Okay,
parents?
okay. In my book that I wrote, Dear Teen, I particularly appealed to parents to show understanding. You see, at a time in one's life, a child believes sometimes totally what parents tells them. This is if you do like this, it will be well with you. If you do like this, it will be here with you. But then come into society and they see that not exactly are those things that their parents said true, and they begin to question in their minds at the very least, if they can actually trust their parents. So it becomes worse when the parents um, begin to appear to know everything. It's a very, very wrong thing for a parent to sound like they know everything. Because when you sound to have answer to every question, you know everything before they are done with the statement, you finish it up for them. You may not know you're actually shutting off that child. When you do it a couple of times, the child feels unheard, and it feels like, oh, my parents or my parent does not want to hear me. And then they begin to, okay, before we even go to the effects of that, what parents need to do, number one, is understanding. What many adults really need to do is just think back, think to when they were teenagers, and think about
Yeah.
their own struggle, and try to relive that season again. Don't think about how you overcame it. So think
Hmm.
about your own confusion, your own difficulty around that time. In psychology, in counseling psychology, that's what we call empathy. You try to put yourself, I believe you know what I'm talking about, right? Of course, you are a counselor too. So it is called empathy. It's trying to put yourself in the shoes of that child that's been pulled about, pulled apart by several forces. So understanding is one of it. Then the other one is patience. People often ask me, why do I not get angry with certain people the way some other persons will get angry with them? The answer is very simple. You can't be, excuse me, a vehicle is passing by. You can't be, listen, you can't be, you can't be impatient with them and you expect them to be their real self around you. So one of the very best things you can do is to be patient with them. Everybody goes at their own pace. Everybody goes at their own pace. Okay, quickly talk about a neurobiological reason for this. Now, in the adult brain, when stimulus is received from either the external or the internal environment, now the information goes through the long route. I explained this in my book. It goes through the long route. It goes through the amygdala. Now, it goes through the prefrontal cortex. At, at that time, the prefrontal cortex has been fully developed. Now, the fact that it has been fully developed allows adults to think about the pros and cons of the decisions that they want to make and how it might hurt them, damage their name, affect their reputation, put more money in their bank accounts, how to it might be good and bad for them if they go ahead in that venture. But for teenagers, their prefrontal context have not yet been fully developed. So it goes through the short route. The amygdala just processes things very quickly, and what they have inside is the pleasure, the advantages, the the merits that whatever action they want to take accrues to them. They often do not think about the consequence, or they do not correctly process, the stimulus to be able to arrive at what consequences might result from the actions that they are about to take. So oftentimes we see teenagers as being spontaneous, being impetuous, being not deep thinking, and they take decisions it appears to be rash. I mean, almost always rash, and then they face the consequences, and they are all sober and a lot. And an average adult begins to think: did you not think before you took this
Okay.
decision? Beat. They thought about it, but the thinking just did not go through the route that an adult thinker would have gone through. And they are not totally to be blamed for that. I mentioned the development of the prefrontal cortex, which does not happen until one is about age 24, 25. So if a teenager
Mm.
is 18, 19, does certain things, if you come to the understanding of the fact that the prefrontal cortex has not been fully developed, you're likely to be more patient with them. So the third thing I'm going to
Yeah.
say before I stop here is that parents need to read and learn. Learn from people like
Mm.
you. You are hosting a show like this to educate them. Let them not parents assume that they know everything. Parents need to really learn about the growth of an adolescent. How does the teenagers? What are the challenges of teenagers? I said something recently in a video I made. I said that every adult is going to expire very very soon. An adult that does not listen to younger people will expire very, very soon. The knowledge that you think you have or the knowledge that they have may not be relevant again in a couple of years to come. And these young persons are the ones that will teach us, in the years to come. So if you're somebody who has a very rigid mind, who doesn't listen to people, you're going to expire very soon. So one thing parents can do is to listen to their own children, listen to children, adolescents, teenagers that are like their own children. They can learn a lot about their struggles, their challenges, their fears, their anxieties, and they will be able to know how do I put it now, how to provide help that will be tailor made for the child. And last of all, I'm going to recommend getting to see a counseling psychologist like yourself?
Thank you. You mentioned something earlier. You were like, every adult has passed through the stage of adolescence. True. And when relating with teenagers, you should think back that while you were also a teenager, I mean, you were experiencing these emotions, you were experiencing these things. So it is not new, but I feel that parents are trying to prevent their children from making the mistake that they made. They know. I don't believe that they know and they are aware, but they're just trying to prevent their teenagers from making the same mistake that they made. So they maybe they pretend like they don't understand the emotions that the things are going through, but they know. So, and when do we draw the line for parents from protecting them and actually understanding that it is this stage that they have these emotions will come, these things will happen.
Oh, okay. Yes, like you said, the parents know. They know their children are going through certain things because they experienced it themselves. The question, however, is do they remember how to say, or sometimes are they trying to appear? Sometimes um, people often discount other people's experiences because they've been through it. Somebody will tell you that, what is it that you're going through that we have also not gone through? And some parents
Mm,
are fond of doing that. They discount the experiences, the challenges of their children. And I think that has not been talked about enough. In effort to put their children in line to make them appear godly, they only say the good things about the challenges they had when growing up. I don't know if your own parents
mm.
did, but I remember my dad used to tell me that it was always in between the first and third position when he was in school. Why was it that
Every
was
parent
coming
was
home?
always first in the class.
Exactly, exactly. Perhaps to them that was a way of motivating you, to be more hardworking, and by that, it seems to it always does invalidate the struggles of
Mm,
young people. So where parents need to draw the line is communicating it in clear terms to these teenagers and adolescents what exactly they are trying to help them avoid. Let me give you an
mm,
example. One of my favorite students, entered my office when I was working in the College of Education in Illinois, Kwara State, Nigeria. And when she entered, she wasn't particularly dressed in a way I like because I'm a Christian, because of my inclinations, my religious idea of how a lady should dress. My first what I thought of doing immediately was tell her to go back, go home, go and dress well before you come back into my office. But I understood that, well, I had myself to protect, but I also have somebody to mentor. So I told her to just sit. Did I ask her to sit? No. I think I just told her in very clear tones, even though inside of me I was very uncomfortable. But I told her that, look, there are people I believe are sent to seduce me, or they just want to seduce me. I'm telling you in clear terms. And I feel very uncomfortable around them. You are my sister, you are my daughter, then I am not comfortable with the dress you are putting on. I would not categorize you as people who seduce lecturers in this college of education. When you appear like this is the exact message you are getting across. This is a message some people might get from your outfit. I can't remember the exact words I used, but I tried so much to not be judgmental at the same time to protect myself. And at the end of our conversation, what she came to do, I made her stay in my office very brief. And it wasn't the jokey kind of thing like we used to have. And the moment I was done with what I said, what I wanted to say, she fell on her knees, she apologized to me, and she went, and then she came back the following day, continued with her apology, had forgotten already. Then our relationship never got a dent. Now the point I'm trying to make is this: it's actually cost parents a little bending of their own ego to sit a child down and say, look, these are my experiences. I failed in this area. I messed up my life in this area, and you are my child, and I am not going to feel fulfilled and happy in life if you also told the same path that I told. So if I say this and say this to you, forgive me if I did not communicate it properly, but these are my fears. I have taught parents to do this, and I've seen adolescents being in quotes, counselors to their parents. And mommy, don't cry again. Mommy, this matter is gone. Mom, I promise you I'm not going to do like this. Daddy, I promise I'm not going to end up like this. And so it takes it don't want to see happen to you. And I'm doing all I can to make sure that you don't hold this part because these are the regrets I have. In counseling, there's something we call, I'm trying to remember this terminology. Yeah. When you kind of open up a little to your clients so that they feel safe, when you are vulnerable a little to your clients so that they feel safe that, oh, the person I've come to meet is not perfect. So
Mm.
since it's not perfect, I mean, I can also, explore I
Self
can
is it
also,
self-disclosure?
God bless, chop no cook. Thank you. Yeah, self-disclosure. Parents also need to do a whole lot of these to their children. And when they do that, they communicate their reason for uh, being protective. And you find out that it is a child, many times than not, that is promising the parents that, okay, I'm going to do better than you did it. And it's going to be because you were by my side and you're cheering me on. The guidance you lacked is what you are giving. In fact, the child will be more, proud of the parents that, oh, the guidance that you lacked is what you are giving me, and I'm going to do it better.
Mm, mm, mm. Awesome, awesome. Thank you. You talked about vulnerability of parents. I think that in as much as that's good, but I feel that there can also be the downside or the disadvantage of a parent being vulnerable to their child. Because I feel that at that stage, the child is not yet, the brain is not yet developed to fully grasp the depth of what the parent is saying. And some can say, "Ah, well, it cannot happen to me." They feel that they are invisible, they cannot be hurt, nothing bad can happen to them. So a
Yeah.
parent being vulnerable, the child can say, "Ah, mommy, it cannot happen to me, it cannot happen to me." So in that situation, what can the parents do?
Okay, so the way to address that is not in that situation. It is before that situation. I tell parents that look, the best example your child, maybe not the best, but the best example your child should have should be you. You should be a very good model to your child. I've heard and seen people talk as if their parents are flawless. So imagine your child thinking that you are flawless and then you open up. You don't have to give them the entire information. They are not mature enough to be your counselor. But then you
Mhm.
open up and you tell them a little about your struggles and your challenges and all that. And they're like, mommy, without good, without this, it breaks down their ego because you've been a good example. No one is perfect, but you've been a good example. You've modeled godliness. I'm not the one telling people, but then we must have heard this before that actions speak louder than words. So it is not about what is said, it's about what is modeled. And of course, what is said is part of what is modeled too. But when actually in actions, a good life, listening here, good communication, patience, tolerance, all those things are modeled in the parents. And they tell the child or the adolescents about certain challenges they've had in the past. The child will feel shocked and see that man they are vulnerable too. And then another example is another thing they can do in that moment. In this case, is to cite examples of people who thought they were not vulnerable or who became vulnerable. I mean, therapist. I am not in support of you telling people stories with details that can easily lead to them. But then, because I'm a Christian, there are so many examples in scriptures that I can use for people that, oh, they were not vulnerable, but then they are vulnerable. And then there's the story of Achilles, right? Achilles, the story of Achilles. Yes, this great God man Achilles, who eventually fell due to his Achilles heel that was not protected from the rites, from the ritual that his mother did to protect him. I mean, some of these things can actually make children or adolescents rather, sorry, that will actually make adolescents um, to tend to want to reason more with parents than if things are communicated in a bland manner and without trying to evoke their reason, their sense of reasoning. And I'm also going to add to it that this is not a one-time thing. It is not a
Mm.
one-time thing. It is never a one-time thing. Like modeling is not a one-time thing. So trying to give guidance to a teenager also cannot be a one-time thing.
Mm. Thank you very much. It's not something that you just advise them once and expect them to just change and expect them to just take up the
Yeah,
advice.
it's not happening.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about the generational gap. Our parents were once teenagers, and now we were once teenagers, and then we have, the Gen Zs. Now, what pressure do you think that the present teenagers are facing that was not in the past generations?
The pressure that current teenagers are facing that are not in the past generations. Well, maybe you should tell me the pressures that you faced back then because I think I'm still a teenager.
One major thing I feel is social media. During our time, social media wasn't like this, and of course, during our parents' time, there was no social media. So the pressure that I feel that our parents were facing is not may not be up to. I wasn't there. They may not be up to what this present was are facing because of the presence of social media.
You're actually correct. I was going to come to that. I was saying I was a teenager because I was saying I'm a teenager because I just wanted to spice things up a little. The biggest factor is social media.
Mm,
Is social media and the lack of parental control. Many parents don't
mm,
know that once they buy for their children, they can actually install some parental control software on it that will monitor the sites the child is going to, that will restrict them from going to certain sites. And even on WhatsApp, there's a way you can do your WhatsApp settings such that someone's chat is going into. I mean, you can read their chat and all of those things like that. And it must be it must be communicated not as policing them.
mhm,
I can tell you that okay, I'm giving you a bodyguard. The bodyguard can serve. You can see the bodyguard as policing you. You can also see the bodyguard as trying to protect you. So it is the way it is communicated. It is the way it is communicated. So then the second one is the lack of parental presence and lack of family presence. While I was growing up, I didn't live among my extended family members, but at least I knew a few of them, and I still know a few of them. Many teenagers these days do not know who their relatives are, and there is very little control that external person who are not their parents have on them. While I was growing up, an older person can practically smack me and tell me, go and tell your parents that I beat you. And some of us were, and it gave room to some people abusing, young people too. But if we were to remove the abuse from there, it gave us the sense of, oh, the community is watching us. Like Hillary Clinton would always
mm,
say, was an African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. So
mm,
back then, almost everybody was watching you, and you're afraid that anybody can report you to your parents. And even though your parents are at work, your next compound neighbor can walk up to your parents and tell them this. But these days, everybody's minding their business, especially if you live in Lagos. In fact, you might not even see your next door neighbor in weeks. You get what I'm trying to say? Everybody's minding their own business, and because people are also afraid of being tagged an abuser, And the world has become so, I mean, Nigeria is becoming so individualistic. We are
Hmm.
departing from a communal way of life, communal way of living, communal way of addressing issues. And because of that, it appears that teenagers are given the leeway to do almost what they want to do, and nobody is putting them in check.
Hmm. I very much agree that we are moving from the communal way of living to becoming individualistic. Because even as teachers, I teach in a school, even as teachers, before you can collect a child, the parent has come to school.
Yeah.
The parent has come to fight. Why would you correct my child? Why would you? Now everybody wants to, my child, my family, mind your business, stay, and it's going to be detrimental
Yeah.
to the upcoming generation. So thank you for that. One question I was want to ask is now let's move into the teenage behaviors. During the teenage stage, there are some behaviors that they exhibit that is natural for that stage. But as adults, we can target, oh, it's giving attitude, it's being disrespectful, or what are those natural, normal behaviors at that stage that some adult tag as being disrespectful or giving attitude?
Okay. One of it I was being, is it being sassy now? Being sassy? Yeah. Being being brief with responses. Being sassy, being brief with responses. You know, as I think I'm a fairly big person. I'm 6'8". I'm about 100 kg. Um, but then the first time I came to to work where I came to work, the first time I met who is my boss today, the vice chancellor and the registrar of the university I work in today. The first time I entered their office, I lay flat. I did the traditional dobale, and the registrar was like, "Ah, ṣé àwọn èèyàn ṣì máa ń dọ̀bálẹ̀ báyìí?" You know that it's very uncommon to see pé I must have been a normal agba, and well, I won't say I'm not a normal agba. It was just a common thing. I mean, to in it was just common thing, with us. But you don't get to see things like that. And the thing is that people that do that, they tend to they tend to be in the good books. Even when they do it pretentiously, they tend to be in the good books of people because they appear more respectful. So, but then you see teenagers just walk past you. Sometimes it's really difficult. It appears difficult for them to, just bend the head like this or bend the knee and greet. I have a particular student here who I consider very different from everybody. If you say good morning, she'll say good morning, sir. How are you? She say I'm fine. She'll reply and ask, how are you too, sir? She'll say, when you say, okay, good night, say, thank you, sir. Good night to you, sir. God bless you too, sir. I'm like, no, 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 you are different from the so many people I've interacted with, over the years. Now, was it 3 days ago? I was asking that, wait, who raised you? When did your grandparents die? I just wanted to know, like, how did you inculcate these values that we see? So these are some of those things, task responses that adolescents give to responses. There are some things I will say consider important. When somebody responds to you, I had to correct two of my students recently when I said something to them and they just replied with "okay," and I highlighted it and I said, "Sir, always add the sir. Never should you remove that sir." Okay, they responded. I said, "Okay, sir, I'm sorry, sir." I said that is fine. I mean, I'm not old school. I'm not old school, but respect actually, I don't think respect is belongs to a particular generation.
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
think I don't think it does. I don't think it does.
What you just said reminded me of something. I have many things that I chat with, and they will enter my DM and write GM, and I'm like,
Okay.
what is GM? She said it's
Okay.
good morning. I said, okay, so you see good morning that you cannot write in full. A lot. They will
Okay.
write if you want to be some other people, the HBD, LLM.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you abbreviating? Now, you might think that this is an informal setting, is your friend, but the thing is, you will get used to it. And when you want to write in an official setting, you find yourself writing DM, HBD, LLM, a lot. And I keep correcting them that if I type, if I messaging me, you type in full. I don't understand GM, I don't understand WD. They have a lot of what this abbreviation. I'm like, I
As
mean,
you
this
said,
is
them. I was marking a script recently of one of my students who wanted to write because and wrote COS, costs. You
yeah,
know,
because it's used to it.
I circled it and I applied the appropriate, punishment for that. Yes, it's as simple as one thing that is just very important is that I think it's important to communicate this thing with love. I've realized that my students and teenagers around me who know that I love them, when I correct them, they do not see it as um they do not see it as me um just wanting to put them down. There are certain people who will say similar things, or maybe even not as heavy things as the things I try to correct them on, and they feel like, "Big, who are you?
Mm,
Why are you? Why are you saying this?" And these are people that I can practically lock up the door, lock just the two of us in the office, and then begin to really, what people call tongue lashing. But when it's coming from the place of love, it's not going to be a tongue lashing. It can be really uncomfortable hearing some of those things I say to them. But then when they realize that this is coming from the place of love,
no.
it changes the game totally. It changes for adults dealing with people like that. I think the most important thing is to communicate, love to these people first of all. Yeah.
Okay, the one you're talking about social media, I wanted to ask a question. As a counseling psychologist, what age would you recommend that parents give their children phone?
I want to take a piece of advice from Elon Musk. And what's the name of the founder of Apple? Steve Jobs. Are you aware that Steve Jobs' children and this guy that founded TikTok, his children are not on TikTok.
Yeah,
See,
I know that.
they don't give his children access to phones. Um, are these children of his mentees access to phone until they were late into their teenagerhood years? Elon Musk, I saw some pictures of his sons recently. They were holding books on solving problems. They were holding books on solving problems. Why there is no particular formula
Mm,
for when teenagers should be allowed on social media. Personally, for me, uh, I think I'll give my children access to my own phone, maybe from the age of maybe 14, maybe about a year before they go to the university. They'll have access to my phone. They can go on my social media, do anything they want to do on my phone. Because if you try to totally shield them from what is happening on social media, and
mm,
they will not have learned the skills to handle certain things, and then it will come like a rushing mighty wind and it just sweeps
mm.
them away. So, yeah, so for me, say age 14, they will have access to my phone. They can chat with their colleagues, chat with their teacher, chat with anybody's phone, but chat with anybody, but then they are still using my phone.
Your
There is
phone.
no there is no big deal in using my second phone. They can use my first phone, they can, but it is still my phone. So, but let's say by the time they are about getting into the university, they will have their own. I see it, I don't see restraining people or preventing access as a way of, carefully addressing certain things. I don't know if you are aware of the people they call get inside, who come to
Yes,
university campus and they get very morally wayward.
because that is the first time they are tasting freedom.
Exactly. And the barrage of temptations that they are facing, they've never experienced 1/10 of it. And because
Mm-hmm.
they never experienced 1/10 of it, that gave their parents no opportunity to teach them how to address the sum of these things. So I won't say totally keep your adolescents from social media, no. Expose them to it systematically, gradually, and with each exposure, you know, you're also giving yourself the opportunity to address some of those things that they also see on social media. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You see that from a get inside thing that you spoke. I have it that I spoke about. I have a teenager. She has been in Ibadan, let's say all her life. She does not know, and she has finished secondary school. She does not
Okay.
know anywhere in Ibadan apart from her school, her church, her house is in the same environment.
Okay.
She stays in the barrack. As house is in the barrack, she attends my school in the barrack. Her church is in the barrack. She knows nowhere except the barrack. And she has finished secondary school. When she wanted to write UTME, and that told her to apply to University of Ibadan so that he can be monitoring, so that he can be monitoring her. Luckily for her, or luckily for the man, anyone, she applied to one university in Osun State. In my mind, I was like, I have seen this thing play before. Once this girl leaves the home, it will take the grace of God for her
Yeah.
to look back. Because
Yeah.
you're overprotecting. You have not taught her the skills that she should have when she's alone.
Exactly. That's it. She has not been taught the skills.
Yeah.
Right on. Right on.
She has not been taught. You think that being overprotective is all what you need. She won't be with you forever. They won't be with you forever. They won't be under your roof forever. They'll become adults eventually. So when they become adults, what have you taught them that they will use at that adult at the stage of adulthood? Nothing. So as parents, beyond being protective, you should also teach them skills for when they leave your house. Because if you don't teach them, life will teach them. Whether you like it or not, they will be taught. They have to be taught. And if they're not taught by you, they'll be taught by life. They'll be taught by people out there. And it is what we are even trying to protect them from that they will not help you to teach. They will not help you to teach them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask this question now. Teens are growing to become adults. They're no longer children, but at the same time, they are not yet adults. So, what level of freedom should they have when it comes to decisions that have to do with them? As children, parents can make all the decisions for them. But as teenagers, should parents still make all their decisions? What role do teenagers have to play in decisions that concern them?
If parents are still making all decisions for teenagers, the question is when are they going to grow? When are they going to have the maturity to deal with the issues of life? I think a parent that is making all decisions for the teenager is not preparing them for life, and the parent is not doing well. So I think even from childhood, parents should offer alternatives to children. By the time a child is going to, let's say, age 10, but I believe that in the formative years, a parent would have, made their, solidified the background, made it very clear their stand on certain things, matters of godliness, matters of dignity of labor, those foundational matters and values should have been addressed in child's, since someone is around. But when the child is beginning to get to, let's say, age 11, age 10, age 11, even maybe before then, depending on how the parent has taught the child to handle issues of life, the parent needs to begin to relax gradually. And by relax gradually, I mean there are certain matters in life that actually, whichever one you choose, you won't be done for it. For example, I mean, you can begin to give options on, choose what you are going to eat. If you are not going to eat this, then make a choice to cook what you want to eat for the whole family. So the choice is between, do I eat what's already in the fridge, or do I cook this now? I have to cook the food I have to need to cook for 5 people. and all of that. So and all of that, it is very important to basically allow them to also make those decisions by themselves, not totally by themselves, because of course you are the one giving them options, right? You are giving them, so they are making decisions within the options
Yes.
that means you have created work. You've created a framework for them, you've created a boundary for them, boundary within which they will not get it wrong. And then
Mm,
with that, I mean, doing that, you've given them the opportunity to have a sense of, okay, time is coming, I'm going to be making decisions by myself. However,
mm.
whatever decision I'll be making, a boundary within which I should make, my decision. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I wonder, is it that parents forget that these teenagers will become adults one day? Is it that they forget that they will leave their roof one day and not teaching them all these necessary skills? When I see some parents, especially in the school that I teach, I'm always, how? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? This child will leave you one day. They will leave you. Okay, do you want them to be coming back to you as adults that, mommy, I want to do this? That's why we have mommy's boys and mommy's girls. Anything, mommy, I want to do this. Mommy, I want to do this, because you didn't do your part. So as a parent, what can they how do I frame this question? What is the thin line between discipline and, or is it thin line? The boundary between discipline and connection. You want to connect with your child, but at the same time, you want to be firm. You want to be right, because as teenagers, they can ride on your weakness. If they notice that you have a particular weakness, you can use it and ride on that. So, what is the boundary between you trying to connect and at the same time still trying to be firm on discipline on your adolescent or teenager?
Okay. Thank you very much. Before I answer that question, I think I saw a comment by one Chiamaka Owodi involving children in decision making. I think it's a very important thing too. Sometimes you take a child out and then you ask them questions. What do you think we should do about this? And if the child says this, then you play the devil's advocate. Point out all the possible things that can go wrong, and then also say that can go right, why this decision is wrong and why this decision is right. It helps them to process, their decisions in the future. Okay, if you are
Yeah.
taking this, these are the chances that this thing will work. These are the chances that it will not work. And if it works, these are the possible pitfalls and these are the possible plus for you. And then allow them to make their choices, allow them to make mistakes, allow them to mess up.
Mistakes. Mm.
Exactly. Allow them to make mistakes. Within a boundary, I talked about creating a boundary. So when they make mistakes within your boundary, the errors will not be such that will be damaging or something that will really destroy their lives. Now, talking about creating connection and ensuring discipline. Now, I'm going to say that, you see, your teenager is not your friend. No, teenager is not your friend. Your child of less than, who is not up to a teenager, is not your friend. Now, no. Maybe late teens, maybe 18, 19, 20. Aha. Now begin to build friendly kind of connection with them. The formative years is basically to lay foundations for them, like I mentioned, values, uh, boundaries. You are basically at that time teaching them. When they get to their early teens, what you are doing there is not teaching them. What you are doing there is that you are coaching them or you are training them. You are giving them opportunities to make decisions, fail, learn, build capabilities. Are you a coach? I watch football, I play football. Uh, Let me not say I play football because it's been a long time. I watch football. So I know that a coach is not a friend, is not your friend as a footballer. No. A coach is basically training you. So that means a coach can sometimes snap at you, put you in your place and all of that. But then when they begin to get to late things, when they show responsibility, at that time, you would have started seeing the output of your labor on them. Imagine a parent looking at his boy and say, "Man, that's my boy." I mean, and the boy is not like a 5 year old. That's my boy. The boy is coming home at 18, coming from the university and say, "That's my boy." And say, "Guy, chop no cool, what's up, guy?" At that time, you're already seeing the fruit of your labor. You have taught them at their early age, as children. You have trained them as teenagers. You've allowed them to make their mistakes. You've raised them up, you've challenged them. Sometimes you've held on some very tough conversations with them, exposed them to both the nice and the not so convenient things. And at that time, they are already becoming adults. So by the time they reach, the late adolescents, 21, 20, 19, 20, 21, you cannot begin to. At that time, you would have built enough connection that you are not struggling for it. Let me tell you something. I went to one of my cousins' house and I learned something. I went with my uncle, his own father. So he saw that we had already come. So my uncle parked in front of the house. We got down. My uncle led the way into his house. My cousin already knew that we were coming. And as my uncle opened the door, my cousin hid behind the door. As my dad came, as his dad came, he just did, "Yee," just to kind of scare him. And at the time, how old was he? Maybe he was around 20 or thereabout. He had grown up to that level. He had grown up to that level, and the relationship now became like an elder brother to a younger brother. You get what I'm trying to say? Even though there's about 60 or maybe about 50 years age gap between them, 55 years age gap. By that time already, they've been taught, they've been trained, they've been coached. They pay attention to me now, and now friendship is. So I'm going to say that parents should never bother about, build the trouble between building connection and discipline. Connection is a natural output of discipline, and I'm going to say that discipline is not always corrective. Discipline
Yeah.
actually has to do with how someone is raised. So the connection is a natural product of good discipline, when done in a.
Hmm. Let me write that.
So
Thank
if
you
a
for
person
that.
is ever bothered about, "Oh, will my child like me, will my child not like me," is doing something wrong.
Mm, mm, mm. True, true, true. Correction is a natural output. Hmm.
Yeah,
Thank you. All
of
right.
discipline.
Yes, we are gradually coming to the end. It has been an insightful session. For those who don't know, Dr. Israel is my mentor. I'm looking up to him like this. I want to be like him when I grow up. All right, so let me ask the
Uh,
final question for parents listening, counselors, educators, or adults generally. What is one thing about teenagers that you would want them to understand? Just one thing about teenagers that you want adults to understand.
Let me start by saying thank you for the honor of calling me your mentor. Thank you very much. Bless you. I hope I'll be able to play that part very well. Okay, so one thing should adults, counselors, teachers, and all understand about teenagers. It is that these guys are still growing. So hold their
Mm,
hands. They're still growing.
mm,
Don't be tired of saying one thing to them 5 times. They
mm,
are still growing. They are not where you are. So stop expecting
mm.
too much. Um, yeah.
That's key points. Because the truth is, you can get tired. Don't expect them to just change the moment you tell them once. Don't expect them to just, accept what you have said just once that you said it. You keep saying it over and over and over again. Like you said, their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. Thank you very much, Dr. Israel Agbeja. It's been an insightful session. Thank you so much. And I hope that when next request for your presence and our podcast, we would honor our invitation.
By God's grace, yes.
Right. Thank you. So we have come to the end of today's episode. I hope that you have been able to learn one or two things, especially for parents who have teenagers. Like Dr. Agbeja said, they are still growing. So hold their hands. Don't let them go. Guide them appropriately so that you can eat the rewards of your labor. You can relax and eat the rewards of your labor. All right, so we'll be taking our guests backstage as I round up the episode. Thank you once again, Dr. Adbeja.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
All right. So we have said that teenagers are not problems to be fixed. They are people trying to grow, learn, and understand themselves. So understanding teenagers does not mean that you have to agree with everything that they are doing. It simply means take your time to see them, hear them, and guide them with patience and wisdom. Thank you once again to all our listeners. I'll see you in the next episode of Between the Lines podcast, which is coming up, of course, in 2 Saturdays from now. Until then, I remain your host, Falakemi Abiodun. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.